Hey guys, my name is Titan and I welcome you to this fourth episode of my short city skyline series Preston, this thriving American port city set in the 1920s, with the main focus being on the harbor that I made for the recent Sunset Harbor Global Build-Off hosted by Paradox Interactive themselves. So on the topic for today is the cargo whale yard belonging to the harbor. And as a matter of fact, this actually is the last episode of Preston. If you remember, at the beginning I said that I recorded the whole progress I made and cut it into 4 episodes. And well, this is the 4th and the last episode of all this. Meaning, for those of you that, and I know it's the majority of people, for those of you that await Widerstein, want Widerstein back and aren't that interested in Preston, don't worry, Widerstein will come back and it's very soon. But for now, let's concentrate on this cargo whale yard here. And I have to say it was really fun making this whole area here behind the cargo harbor, or well, I mean, technically it still belongs to the cargo harbor, so let's say it was fun making this area behind the cargo docks or piers or whatever. I think you get the point here. And for the design of this cargo harbor, I basically followed my own imagination here, and I basically just did whatever seemed right to me at this spot here. But I also looked up some historical photographs of, for example, the harbor in New York and its whale infrastructure behind the cargo docks. Of course, historic photographs. And so I think I, in general, did a somewhat good and authentic whale yard here. So this whole whale yard follows the idea that the cargo docks or the cargo piers, the seafronts or the waterfronts, have direct access to the whale infrastructure, so that goods, as I already said in the last episode, so that goods can get unloaded onto train cars directly from the ship. And the thought behind that is then that these loaden or these full whale cars can then be pulled onto the whale yard, where they maybe stand for 1 or 2 days or maybe even up to a week until they get sort of distributed all over the country. So that was my whole intention, and following that intention, the whale yard is relatively big. Relatively being an important word here, because of course for such a harbor the whale yard would be much bigger than I did it. But I had to work around the place problems I had here, but I also had to work with the little time I had in order to make it fit, because I only had 1 week for this whole harbor area, to make this whole harbor area, and so I had to make fit with that time. And so some things are smaller than in real life, but that's just what it is. So maybe we can see it as not a realistic representation in terms of size, but more like of a diorama situation. But I don't think it's that important that this whole area is smaller than it sort of would need to be in real life, because that's just not the point for this series and for this build here. So you already saw that I did, I think, a good portion of the layout of the cargo of the whale yard, And to be honest, there is not that much to say about this. I already told you what all these tracks and this railyard in general is supposed to be for, meaning that train cars can wait, I suppose, up to 1 week here before they get transferred into the whole country. Another thing I have to say is that, and maybe you already noticed that based on the time-lapse footage here, that this whole railyard is not functional. One reason being that railyards in general in the game are not functional, but also that being just made for the build-off and this tiny series, I thought it's not important that I have to squeeze some functionality in. So at the end, all I did was putting some prop trains and prop engines on there, but you'll see that in a few minutes. So by now most of the piers are connected to the railyard, so we can, let's say, get into the more detailed parts of the railyard. And based on the fact that it is a railyard after all, I thought it would also make a lot of sense to put some maintenance infrastructure here, which I'm doing, for example, with these roundhouses here, but a bit later also with other buildings. For the moment, we're just having these roundhouses there, and this building in the middle here, which I would say is like restrooms for train drivers, and maybe wardrobes, and maybe there is room where they can spend their breaks. At least that's what there is in modern railyards, and I was just thinking it possibly was the same back then. I had a bit of problems with these roundhouses, as the curvature of these roundhouses doesn't quite fit the curvature of the turntable there. So you see I had to move it and make it a bit glitchy in order to get it fit. In the end, it worked good enough for me, at least. And in the end, it at least worked well enough on in the cinematic footage. You also see I used these traffic cones, as I did if you watched it and if you remember, as I also did in the Baroque garden of Wederstein. I'm using these traffic cones here as just as sort of a tool for helping me to get the shape and the measures right. Now it was in around this at around this time here, and now that I'm making this, I need to think what the correct technical English term is for this, but I think I don't quite remember. This is a problem. Well, it was around here that I noticed that the whale yard is in fact a bit small based on, well, as I already said, based on reality, but in this case also based on just the size of the harbor and everything. So I extended the whale yard by quite a bit, actually. What I'm doing for now is a sort of maintenance yard for train engines, and I'm using this modern Traverse, I think it's called. I'm using this modern thingy here to sort of realize that, and it's problematic to talk about it if you lack the proper English technical terms. But I think you can see what I'm trying to achieve based on the footage you're seeing in front of you, so it's not that problematic. The point of this here is just that it's sort of supposed to represent a maintenance yard for the steam engines, these steam engines here. And it's a good thing that Revo made these basically do-it-yourself depot doors, because they make it very easy to basically transform every building you have into a train depot. So I already used them in the last two episodes on the passenger harbor and on the cargo harbor to get the visuals of a warehouse, and here I use them to actually turn these, or to get some doors, some maintenance doors on the side of the buildings where there were just windows before. And now we already start with the finer detailing of the whole area, starting with buffers and starting with water towers alongside the whole, alongside the whole tracks and in the whole area, because we're of course in the steam age. So this is something very important, because without water towers and coaling towers, as we for example plop right here, nothing worked back then. I had a bit of a hard time figuring out what to do in between the whale yard and the cargo harbor, basically where I'm putting down gravel and pavement with surface painter right now. I had a bit of a hard time figuring out how to actually detail this area. With modern whale yards, you can basically just plop some grass there, maybe some gravel piles or trash piles, basically, even. maybe also small bushes and trees. But all those things are sort of a bit of a sign that this whole area is a bit run down, and due to that I was wondering, well, could I do that for such a historic scenario? Because after all, while a whale yard might be run down nowadays, it certainly wasn't back then when it was just 10 years old or something. In the end, I decided to go for the same look. And I'm already preparing this with already preparing this now with these pavement edges here. And in just a few seconds or in just a few minutes, I will actually go into the fine tuning with dirty curls and with grass and small bushes. And in the end, I think that turned out pretty believable, so to say. I think that's a good term. Maybe it's not the best, but it's believable to look at. So I think now you see the look that I'm trying to achieve here with, as I said, nowadays these sort of small areas in between tracks would be a bit overgrown, maybe even with trash lying around. And I sort of went for the same look for this historic setting, even though I wasn't sure if it makes sense, as I already said. But well, you be the judge if it is realistic or not, but at least it fills these little gaps, and it certainly makes it look more alive, as I already say, as I always say. And I'm basically doing the same with putting down some crates here as sort of like goods that are waiting to be transported, or goods that maybe just arrived, or sort of some in-between storage. And coming to a big question I got a lot of times actually is if I am able or if I can share the save game with you. Well, I of course can do that. The problem is, and I think I already told so in one of the last episodes, is that I used quite a lot of local assets and local props in this save that I got from various creators once they noticed that I'm going for a historic setting. they were so kind as to provide me with some of their works that aren't yet available on the workshop. So the problem is, if I share the save game with you, there might be a lot of props or assets that are missing. Most notably, probably most of the ships in the harbor. And also some of the historic cars and crates lying around. So if you want the save game, feel free to write it in the comments, and based on the responses I get, I will make like a final decision if I will publish the save game or not. Because I think with all the missing props, assets, whatever, the sort of feeling of this whole harbor gets a little bit destroyed. So if you want to save game, write it in the comments, and if there are enough people that either want it or also are fine with the bit of lack of detail, then I might still do it. And now we are basically realizing what I already said with all these train wagons waiting to be transported into the whole country, or maybe they are full of goods that just arrived at the harbor and are waiting for the ship to be for a ship, so they can get transported into the whole wide world basically. But by now the rail yard is kind of done already, and that means the whole harbor is done. So we are coming to an end of this episode, and with that to an end of this very short series. The last thing I'm doing now is just sort of making this I wouldn't call it waterfront, this transition from the land into the sea, and I went for a just natural look here. One thing that hasn't really appeared in the episode until now is this little fortress. You see, now you can see it. This little fortress is an idea I got from the US city of Boston, where there also is this old fortress situated sort of at the entry to the harbor. In my city here, I went for a sort of overgrown look, so that the fortress isn't in use anymore. I'm not sure if that's realistic, because I did a bit of research and I found out that the fortress in Boston in fact was in use continuously. But yeah, I suppose I just used some artistic freedom here, or artistic liberties here, and made this fortress into a unused and a bit overgrown one that probably nowadays would be a tourist attraction. But my friends, with all that being said, it's also time for me to stop talking all this nonsense and bring this to an end. I want to thank you for watching this episode and this whole very short series, even though I totally acknowledge that this is not what the majority of people knows me for and probably has subscribed my channel for, as I can see on the view count, of course. But don't worry, Widerstein will be back, and it will be very soon. For now, that's it from my side. I thank you for watching, and if you like what I'm doing here, if you found my channel through this American city, stick with us. There are some great things coming, so feel free to subscribe to my channel. You can also hop on my Discord server if you have any critiques you want to tell me, or if you just want to get in touch with me or others who follow my work. And well, if you really want to support me, feel free to do so on Patreon for early access to assets or videos, just as this video has been in early access for, well, at least 2 days. That's it from my side. I really thank you for watching. Have a nice time, stay safe, stay tuned, stay healthy in these times, and I'll see you again in the next video, which will be Veda Stadt, don't worry. Bye.